Okay, everyone. I think we're just going to dive on in. All right. So for those of you who just joined, again, my name is Etiquette. I'm the founder of the Planetary Health Collective. And tonight is our second part of a multiple part series that we're doing on how to integrate sustainability into your food and nutrition careers. On the steering committee, we discovered that there's a lot of desire in the nutrition world to get more involved in food policy and in sustainability efforts and in environmentalism, but it's not something that we're really trained on. And it's also something that if you're not thinking about it, you're not exposed to it, can feel really hopeless at times, not knowing where to get involved, but wanting so badly to help to make a difference. So we put together this webinar series for free for our community so that we can all share the positive examples of members in our community who have found a way to bridge sustainability and nutrition to have an impact on both human health and environmental health. So that is what this series is, and we welcome you all, and we're so happy to have your time. So welcome to Planetary Health on the Menu. So for today's agenda, I am going to be going over some of the norms and etiquette for the call. If you have not yet muted your line, please go ahead and do so right now. And also, please continue introducing yourself in the chat as we're going here. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Let us know your name, where you're from, and what you're doing in the nutrition world. If you're totally new to nutrition and sustainability, that's fine too. Let us know in the chat what it is that you're hoping to learn and what would be the most valuable thing for you to come out of tonight. So after we talk about norms and etiquette, I'll introduce you guys very briefly to who we are at the Planetary Collective, what we do, what we believe in, and then we're going to transition right into our introduction for our panelists tonight. They will share a little bit about their stories, and then Bretta, our Director of Operations here at the Planetary Health Collective, is going to take over and moderate a Q&A. So during that Q&A, we have a couple questions already prepared for everybody, but we would love to hear from you guys in the audience as well about what you want to learn from these amazing speakers. So tonight we are joined by two registered dietitian and a food policy nutrition professional who is an anti-oppression vegan. So we want you guys to ask all of the questions. You do not have to be a dietitian to get involved in this work at all. So take advantage of that tonight. And after we get through the panel questions, we'll share a little bit about how you all can get involved with the Planetary Health Collective if you are looking to volunteer with an organization that works directly in sustainability and nutrition. And even though she's not here tonight, Mary Purdie, our wonderful Director of Education, has been seminal in organizing this entire panel series. So she's here with us in spirit. You can see her picture there. All right, norms and etiquette. So if you have not yet muted your line, please go ahead and mute your line. This will help us to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time and to our wonderful panelists who have donated their time to be here with us tonight. Please also take a minute to add your pronouns to your name and your Zoom screen if you have not already done that. This is a safe, diverse, and identity affirming space. So we encourage you to feel free to be yourself here. And any hate speech or harassment of any kind will result in immediate removal from the call, but I say this every time. I know that's not going to be a problem in our community. Again, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know your name, what you want to learn, and participate. We're going to be sending out a couple of links. One of them will be for a survey for that'll help us to kind of formulate our webinars moving forward and the type of content that we create for our community. Ignore the raise hand feature. If you have a question, you can just honestly just send it into the chat. So ignore that one. And we'll also be sending out a link to accept donations. So if you're having a really good time tonight, you want to see more of this, we are all 100% volunteering our time for the Planetary Health Collective to put together events like this. So if you can donate even $1, that would make us very, very happy, but it is not expected or required. Okay, so welcome to the Planetary Health Collective. We are a movement to mitigate climate change and nourish human health by leveraging the role of food and nutrition professionals in the fight. We fundamentally believe that food and nutrition professionals are so close to both the sustainability and human health space that it would be a shame for us to not learn how to leverage our unique role towards improving both health and environmental health. And we see the two of them as intricately interlinked with climate, labor, racial, and health justice, as well as anti-hunger and food justice. So we take a very intersectional approach to everything that we do here at the PHC, and that is foundational to our mission here. And our mission is to activate, incubate, and elevate leadership potential for up-and-coming or established food and nutrition professionals who want to find a way to use their practice, their platform, their spaces to cultivate a more just, regenerative, and climate resilient food future for all. So the way that we hope to do that is by providing an opportunity for all of those people who want to break into this work and into this space to professionalize and to become educated on these topics in a way that is nuanced and intersectional. So we essentially want to provide anybody in the food and nutrition world with the opportunities and the education, the training, and the community to allow you to participate in a meaningful way in climate justice and health justice work. So we teach our members how to connect the dots between each of those elements of what we believe to be planetary health, which are food, climate, labor, racial, and health justice. We incubate our community by welcoming community members of all kinds at all experience levels. We don't do any gatekeeping. So if you want to get involved in this work and you're feeling worried about not having enough policy experience or advocacy experience and not knowing where to start, we welcome you with open arms. Everybody is welcome at the PHC. And then we provide you with opportunities to activate. So we have identified groups that are our allies in this work. We work together on campaigning, and in the next year, 2022, we're going to be targeting more kind of policy efforts in the planetary health space. So we're really hoping to kind of build out our capacity there and get our community involved in systemic change for food and climate justice at the local, state, and federal level. So if any of that is resonating for you, please go ahead and join our Facebook group. Find Planetary Health Collective on Facebook. Join us. We're constantly posting really high quality content there. And then we also have an email list that goes out to everybody in the PHC community that is like a roundup of the best information that we pull from our Facebook group. So if you're avoiding Facebook for any reason these days, which is completely understandable, make sure that you're checking our emails because we pull all the best stuff out from there and then we'll just share it with you through our email list. Awesome. So welcome everybody to the Planetary Health Collective. We hope that you'll get involved with us. Without further ado, I'm gonna introduce you to our panelists. So tonight we'll be joined by Amanda Terillo, Aaron Meyer, and Kayla Kaplan. Amanda will be presenting first. She's a founder of Olive Branch Gardens. She's a registered dietitian and farmer living in Central Virginia. And early on in her studies to become a dietitian, she began to notice that there was a disconnect between agriculture and nutrition. So to bridge that gap, she followed her passion and received a master's degree in sustainable food systems from Green Mountain College in Vermont. And currently she works on her family farm called Olive Branch Gardens, which is a small diversified vegetable and biodynamic farm. She's also the author of Kitchen Confidence, Improve Your Health, Save Money, Waste Less. And this is a book that's all about creating nutritious meals and reducing food waste at home. She's also given several presentations on environmental nutrition to varied audiences throughout the years to bring awareness to these topics. And she's available to connect with on Instagram at Olive Branch Gardens. So Amanda, without further ado, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You're good.
Well, thank you, I-10. That was a lovely introduction. I'm excited to be here. So again, I'm Amanda. I'm a dietitian. I've been a dietitian for almost 10 years, which is a little scary, but that's okay. That's a good thing. And I've done multiple different positions within the dietitian world. And one of the great things about, the nutrition world is that you could pursue lots of different avenues and just lots of different experiences. So I've done, so I started out actually just when I was living in DC, that's where I did my internship. And then that's where I stayed. And I started out in a tech world, which is totally unrelated to what I'm doing now, but it was super fun. It just exposed me mostly to DC, and that's where I kind of got into, where I got into sustainability a lot, because there was a lot going on then. So this was 10 years ago, and there was a lot of school gardens and community gardens. And also while living there, I worked for a farmer at the farmer's market for several years. And I just learned a lot from her, and also just really being inspired. And I don't really have much of an experience. So currently I'm mostly farming. That's what I do. And I didn't really have an experience of it when I was younger. I grew up near in New York. So first Brooklyn and then Long Island. And my parents, they didn't like garden at all. But my grandfather did have a farm, but I didn't see it very often because he lived pretty far away. But I think like those, just learning about it just doesn't instills in you, and you just learn about it, and it just really piques your interest. And then I just, started, when I was doing other nutrition work and little contract work here and there, and I worked for like an outpatient clinic, I just realized and learned that there's a really big disconnect between nutrition and agriculture. There was always like talking about the calories and, food. It was always like black and white, and there wasn't a lot of talk about the where the food was coming from, and just the environmental impact of our food and the cultural aspect of our food, and how, food is just so much more than calories. It provides us love, and it's the greatest connection to earth. So while I was in DC and I was connecting with local gardens, everything, I decided to get my master's or my graduate degree in sustainable food systems. And that was awesome because I was like, oh, I feel at home. I was talking to like-minded people. And it was a really awesome program. It was a bunch of people doing all different kinds of things, not just agricultural work, but people were doing like food policy, and there were chefs, and there was a couple of other nutritionists, and people who were just environmentalists. And from there, that's what I wrote for our grad school for our capstone. So basically like the final project or thesis, I wrote my book, Kitchen Confidence, which is basically really about how to reduce food waste in the kitchen by making simple meals and making it just really accessible. And so then after a couple of years after several years in DC, my husband and I really wanted to own some land, and that's really impossible in DC for many reasons. But so we moved out to central Virginia. So currently we're in Barboursville, Virginia, which is 30 minutes north of Charlottesville. And we bought a place that has 2 acres, which, a while ago I'd have been like, you can't start a farm in 2 acres. That's impossible. But the more I learned about, small scale market farming, and we always homestead, and then basically it was kind of like the COVID baby. We had more time, and it was just like, oh, this is the perfect time to make our dreams reality. So that's what I'm currently doing now, is mainly just focusing my energy on our farm. So this is our first year in or growing food for profit hopeful profit, not exactly yet. It was always the first year business, but so this is our first year at it, and we've just been at farmers markets, and we're currently just looking to expand our customer base and learning a lot more about growing food in a much larger area than just like in a small garden, which we did before. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm not sure anyone has any questions, or if that's for later.
Oh yeah, we can save the questions for later. But Amanda, it's your story is so fascinating, because I know that there are several dietitians and other food and nutrition professionals who are interested in getting more knowledgeable on how to grow their own food, and the growing your own food movement is also a very powerful space. So I'm sure we will get more questions about that in the Q&A, and you are a total inspiration, as Erin says. You absolutely are. Also, if you guys don't follow Amanda yet on Instagram, follow her at Olive Branch Gardens, because it's so satisfying to watch all of the work that you put into on your farm come to fruition. Like seeing what you're growing grow, and like all the projects that you and your husband undertake is just so impressive. So thank you so much for sharing your story, Amanda. And for those of you who do have questions about that, you can either, jot them down and save them for the Q&A later, or you can send them into the chat, and we will get to them in just a minute. So thank you so much, Amanda. All right, next up, we have Erin Meyer, who is a mom, dietitian, chef, and food systems professional who believes that true food system change begins with your personal food story. So she invites all of us to take a moment right now to close our eyes and visualize our own food stories. What do you see? So for Erin, she imagines watching her great aunt on Christmas Eve taste prosciutto that she cured, close her eyes, and say, just like mama's. Her food stories are deeply rooted in family, culture, and community, and they have guided her to where she is today. So throughout her 30-plus year career in healthcare education, nonprofit leadership, and executive leadership, she has had the opportunity to collaborate with farmers, culinary and health professionals, and food system experts. These experiences, alongside her unique food story, have given her the gift to create Basil's Harvest, which is a nonprofit with a mission to nurture a more healthful, equitable, and resilient food system by lifting up the critical connections between the health of people, farms, and the soil. So without further ado, meet Erin.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you reading our introductions and our bios, and it's truly, it becomes our value proposition, right? Because it's what we believe in so passionately. And I've been around a long time. So with that, you mentioned the food story, and I'd love to take 30 seconds of this time that we have together, just for everybody to take a deep breath where you are and to close your eyes and just let a visual of what your food story is, whether it's a memory, a flavor, a place, and just take that and just let it meld into you. And as it's melding into you, just think about what that means to you and the impact that it's had on your life. And it could be happy, it could spark sadness, it could spark excitement, it could spark the best piece of prosciutto that you ever had, and having your great aunt give you that compliment because it took her back to her home and as a child. So just, I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds, but just kind of embrace that for right now. All right. So you're ready to go. You have those flavors, those stories. A little bit about my story and my journey. I am a dietitian. I started in a diabetes resource center where I was a certified diabetes educator, and I was there for 10 years. I moved into management, and we were really lucky that our diabetes resource center was an RN/RD program, and we patients were consulted to us. So we were managing the patients from medicine, nutrition, and exercise. That was our role. And so it was like they became part of our family, and helping just them with behavior change and meeting them where they were. And the piece for me that was missing is I became a dietitian, but I didn't know how to cook. And I was, giving all this expert advice on food and engaging in behavior change. And so I really felt strongly that I needed to go to culinary school so I could learn more and be able to help and guide and promote and help them embrace where they were and utilizing foods that they were using at home, growing and giving them more ideas. And I was there for about 10 years.
Yeah, I put it in the dishwasher. It's mine. I'm actually going to pick up.
Just a reminder to everyone to mute
I'm
yourself.
going to take this back. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of still dirty actually. Maybe I never got one.
Okay, so I went to culinary school. I had the opportunity to stay home with my kids. And the one lesson that I learned is that you don't go from full-time management to no time management or work with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so within about 2 weeks, I started a small business with my kids. It was a hobby. We lived on 12 acres. It was a farm. We had a hoop house. We had animals. We had a large garden space. And we started making herbal infused vinegar and going to the farmers markets. And what started in our house moved into a church. We based our foods that we were going to be making on our heritage, which was Italian and German, on family traditions, and on promoting and supporting the local agricultural movement. And from the church, we bought a building and we moved into that building, and we had a fermentation room, we had a bake shop, we had a place where we were making pasta. With all those ingredients and what we were doing, we were starting to contract with farmers, and really passionate about the story that we were telling and the foods that we were preparing. we had that for about 10 years. And for all of you who are parents, who will become parents, who have connections to kids, be careful when you raise your children to be independent thinkers and global citizens, they will take you up on it. And our children, we have two daughters, they came to us sharing their idea of where they wanted to go to high school and why they wanted to go to high school there, and that they were going to do it. And if they couldn't do it their freshman year, they were going to do it their sophomore year. So we listened to them. I pushed back quite a bit, I will be honest. But it's the best thing that we did for our kids after all the exploration and research. And so they moved 4 hours away, and I wasn't going to be a mom that raised her kids 4 hours away. So we put everything in order and we moved to the Chicagoland area. And at that time, I started grad school. I was actually in grad school with Amanda at Green Mountain College. And I started a position at a nonprofit where we were supporting and promoting small diversified agriculture and connecting professional chefs and bakers to that type of movement by bringing them to the farm and engaging them in experiential education. And we were really looking at it through the 4 legs of sustainability, which this group really focuses on: the environmental, economic, social, and cultural impacts. And we were taking them through that hands-on on the farm, and looking through the lens of the farm and then the ripple out effect to the community. So really trying to provide and promote this regional food system. The piece that was missing for me in all of that, it was a wonderful experience. I made lifelong friends. We created change. But the piece that was missing is that I was adamant that the healthcare community needed to be involved in this, and they needed to have their hands in the soil. And during that period of time, actually, before I started at the foundation, there were a group of 7 of us that started a culinary medicine program. And it was after the first class that I came back to our team and said, we need to get these people to the farm. And so, you know, a little bit of time went by and I was able to start Basil's Harvest. I left my position at the foundation. I started Basil's Harvest 3 years ago, and we are working on a farm to institution pilot. This is year 2, where we're working throughout the whole value supply chain. So starting with the farmer, moving to the mill. So that farmer added an economic driver by building a mill, that mill to distribution to the hospital, and then looking at it through the lens of what has to happen from a dietitian's perspective or a physician's perspective. What's that technical assistance? Because we're not going to change the system by putting oats on a tray in the hospital, but that's one step in changing the system. And so we really work with a lot of different folks, from the supply chain folks to the educators, to looking at what has to happen or what are the needs in the kitchen to create change and understanding and education. So I'm just, it's a privilege to be here. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to hearing from Kayla.
Amazing, Erin. I'm just completely floored at the work that you all do at Basil's Harvest, because it's very much aligned with a lot of, like, you know, what we're trying to do here at Planetary Health Collective as well. We fundamentally believe that healthcare providers have to be involved in this work, and that the work is so much bigger than, as you said, just changing what's on someone's tray. There's a whole supply chain. There's a whole connection and ecosystem from the farm to institutions, to the corporations, to the consumers, that has to be nurtured in a radically different way than it has been. So we are so excited to have you here and to learn more from you once we get to the Q&A. So thank you so much for sharing that. So we have Kayla up next. Kayla, she, her, is an anti-oppression vegan who is passionate about building sustainable, equitable food systems and improving nutrition education. She has a background in human biology, food and nutrition programs and policy, and experience as a critical food studies researcher. She is the head of nutrition communications for Food Space Technology, and you can find Kayla sharing intersectional vegan resources on Instagram, walking her dog Ginny, or diving into yet another new project. So without further ado, meet Kayla.
Thanks, Aitan. Hi, everyone. I am Kayla. As Aitan mentioned, I do use she, her pronouns, and I am all of the things that were read in my bio. And up front, the difference between me maybe is that I am not a dietitian, don't plan to become a dietitian, and will never give anybody one-to-one nutrition advice. Never going to answer that question that everyone asks me when I say I have a degree in nutrition, which is, what should I be eating? And I will always say, you should talk to a registered dietitian. So that's the TLDR version for me. Too long, don't read. I'm a vegan who is not a dietitian, but I am a nutrition professional. I'm still kind of figuring out what that means, but I figured I would share a little bit about my path getting to the point of calling myself a nutrition professional. And we'll see when I actually end up fully embracing that title and believing it for myself. But I had a really big childhood curiosity with science and all things kind of science geekiness. I wrote my college entrance essay on vestigial structures. I love evolution. I thought it was super cool. I was largely inspired by my late grandfather, who was a medical doctor as well as a lawyer, who taught me that you can do amazing things in life. And I was actually diagnosed between high school and college. I was diagnosed with learning disabilities that shed a lot on my time in school, where I was kind of grouped into the gifted classes, but was never really felt at home or seen within the standardized US public school system. And so that was a pretty big shift for me going into college, especially as somebody who was pre-med and going into sciences, where there's not a lot of leeway or flexibility. So I managed to get 2 years of being pre-med at Indiana University. My major was human biology. And then I one day was on the way to my intro bio lab, which wasn't hard, but I hated it. And I was talking to my mom and I was like, I just really don't want to go to class. And she was like, don't go get something to eat. So I was like, okay. And that day I just made up my mind that I was done trying to force myself to become pre-med, that I could not get through another chemistry class. And I had no desire to even touch physics. And I dropped pre-med and kind of had to have this, oh my God, I've been working towards a goal for 18 years that I no longer have any interest in. What do I want to do? And I kind of just let myself wonder at that question. I continued to take my human biology classes, and that next semester, I had this really incredible class that talked about the interconnectedness of poverty and obesity. And while I have learned a lot about obesity since then, it was a really, really intriguing class. And we learned a lot about the bioevolutionary side of food and nutrition, and how the gut-brain trade-off happened, and a lot about the anthropology of food. And I got to read a lot, and I found out that I really actually enjoyed what I was reading and studying, which for my first time kind of in my whole school experience, whatever, that was my first time really enjoying my homework, doing the reading and not just skimming to the end and trying to pass a test. And so I decided to kind of invest in that interest, and I took on a nutrition intern position at a local food pantry, which was an amazing organization called Mother Hubbard's Cupboard in Bloomington. I did cooking demos there, helped teach a kids cooking class, and helped around the kitchen and garden tool share system that they had. I finished my degree, did it in 3.5 years, and then was kind of like, well, I'll stick around my college town because all of my friends are here. And my professor of one of my geography of food classes, which was my last elective I took in college, had overheard me talking about some independent research I was doing for credit on transparency in the US food system, asked me if I wanted a job in his lab called a quantitative critical food studies lab. And I spent the next 1.5 years for him doing research, driving around rural Indiana and investigating kind of what the temporality of emergency food assistance looked like in South Central Indiana. And so I was able to publish a couple of papers through that lab, which was really incredible. Didn't think I would be published in quantitative critical food studies since I failed every math test I ever took. that's still true through the graduate degree that he kind of, that professor really inspired me towards. I ended up at Tufts University at Friedman, where I met I-10 and discovered what the Planetary Health Collective is all about in person with her there. And it was another kind of experience guided by more experiences and side quests and side hustles. And I have ADHD. I start a lot of projects that I don't necessarily finish. And I took an internship there my first semester of graduate school, living in a brand new city with a dog. And it was the internship that really inspired me to learn more about working with small food startups and local businesses. It was a marketing internship at Branch Food, which is a Boston organization. And after working with Lauren at Branch Food, I decided that I really wanted to pursue what it's like to do more work into social media, which at that point had been a creative outlet for myself, and figured that I could actually start to use it in ways that would kind of further some of my other interests. So after some time in Boston, the pandemic hit, and I had just launched my first business, which I co-created, called the Vegan Zine, to connect local people with local opportunities and community that is all centralized around veganism, but that's not the only thing that we all do. And then I finished up my master's degree, and so the official long form name of that is the Food and Nutrition Policy and Programs program degree. And I self-designed my concentration. I-10's laughing. I self-designed a concentration called Nutrition Innovation and Communication, and was working with some small food businesses doing marketing communications work. And then just short of a year where I started working with Food Space Technology, and I'm now their head of nutrition communication. And so basically what I do is I take all of the information from a bunch of different departments. I research food and nutrition, a lot of regulation around food and nutrition, as well as trends, marketing, social media, all that kind of stuff. And I package it into our different communication channels, including email marketing, podcasts. I do actually host a podcast through work called Food Space Pod. And I essentially just connect all the different departments, make sure that we're doing food and nutrition work justice, and that everything is evidence-based. And I help them publish it, and it's an alternative career. It's very niche, and it's still, I work in food and nutrition every day. I'm doing different things every day, which keeps me really interested and motivated. I get to learn. I read a lot. I read so many newsletters. I read so many publications and studies, and I get to actually use all of this work and really drive myself in an independent position that I'm interested in, and I feel like I'm making a difference in. So that's my spiel. Not a dietitian.
Amazing. Not a dietitian. Kayla, we're so lucky to have you here because, I mean, for many reasons, you're brilliant and you're taking such an unconventional path in the nutrition space, but there are so many people in our community and in the food and nutrition space in general who want to know the things that you know and who want to know how to learn the things that you know. So I think that you're like a luminary in that space, and you're really kind of breaking headway in that direction so that we, and like even in the dietetics community, will learn from you. And how do we learn about different food and nutrition regulations? So we're very appreciative to have you here. I know that we also had like many requests in our last session to have somebody who is not a dietitian, but who is deeply immersed in this work come on and represent the community. So we're really happy to have you here. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Bretta, who is going to tackle the Q&A. So if you do have any questions for any of our amazing panelists tonight, please go ahead and send those into the chat. We'll be fielding those, and we'll get to as many as we can.
Hi, everybody. Just give me 1 second to get all of our speakers highlighted real quick and spotlighted for you all.
While she's doing that, also, I just really want to highlight Kayla's podcast. So if you go follow and subscribe to that podcast, Food Space Pod. If you haven't yet, go follow. They talk about everything under the sun in the food world. So if you want to become more, knowledgeable about like food policy, labeling laws, all of that stuff that you want to know for your clients, for your patients, for your work, go follow that podcast. Okay, subscribe.
All right, awesome. So before I dive into some specific questions, I would love for each of you to kind of just give us like, what does a day in your life look like, since you guys all have such unique and different backgrounds and work that you do? We'll just go ahead and start with Kayla. Just go to my screen.
All right. My day always starts with coffee. Big fan of oat milk creamers. Gotta love a good oat milk creamer that doesn't curdle. But other than that, I also start out my day by reading. Like I mentioned in my little spiel, I read a lot of different newsletters, industry news, and also love Marion Nestle's food politics list. So I sign up for pretty much every newsletter I can get, start out by reading, and then dive into whatever pressing projects people haven't planned properly in advance for, which is a lot of working with the developers and engineers on my team. So I'm essentially helping our machine learning that runs the proprietary base of our company learn how to read and digest food labels and apply the taxonomy that I helped create to the machine learning. I work in online grocery, so it's essentially a lot of project-based work, but always starts with coffee.
Awesome. Thank you. That's so cool. And I think it's just nice to put that into perspective, because it's hard for, you know, those careers that are so not something that we think about every day. It's like, I don't even know what that looks like. Awesome. Well, Erin, I would love to hear a little bit about what your typical day looks like.
Well, I usually get up in the morning and take our 2.5-year-old black lab for a walk. Even when I am frustrated with him because he ate my glasses about a week ago, and I really would like to have my new glasses to arrive so I can wear them. However, coffee, exercise, journaling, just really trying to get my head in a space where I'm open to receive and I can think and work through the day. Right now, COVID changed the way that we work dramatically. We had started our farm to hospital project. We're in year 2, so we started it 2 years ago, and working. I was on the road meeting with the farmers, on the road networking, building relationship, really trying to work with other organizations and building relationship with other nonprofits who are working in the food system, regional supply chain space. COVID changed all that, and everybody pivoted, and it was, for probably all of us, it was just Zoom, 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 and that continues today. So doing a lot of that with the work I do. One of the advantages is I'm able to be on the farm this year. And so we've partnered with the Rodale Institute, and they're doing our soil sampling and our nutrient density research for us. And so I was able to be with them collecting samples in 4 fields. So traipsing through lots of acres of wheat and rye, which I just thoroughly enjoyed. So I'm able to do that, and so those are really my days. Right now, it's a lot of computer time.
Is that everyone right now? I feel
Yeah, which is really sad, because I love to be outside, and I love to be meeting people and working with people, and so it's a paradigm shift for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that's happened just across so many industries, even like connecting with patients. It's all virtual now, and we've lost a lot of that personal connection. But thanks for sharing. And Amanda, what does your typical day look like? Oh, yeah.
Okay, so my day also starts with coffee. This seems to be the trend, and try to get up. So I have a 1.5-year-old, so I try to get some stuff done before she gets up outside. And we'll see how the rain goes tomorrow. I might not be able to get too much done tomorrow, and there's a market tomorrow, which I hope to get to, but whatever, I'll figure it out. But yeah, so, and then, so a lot of it's about nap time. Matt and my husband and I were joking that we're going to call the farm Nap Time Farm, because we do a lot when she naps, and she's a really good sleeper. So I'm grateful for that. So basically, it's whenever I'm outside trying to, get things, crops growing or taking care of them, basically when she's sleeping and when she's awake, just kind of taking care of her. So that's pretty much how my days go.
Well, I think what we've learned here is that to be an awesome, sustainable dietitian or food professional, you have to start your day with coffee. And I'm all on board with that. So I have one more kind of overarching question, and then we have quite a few questions from our listeners coming in. But since all of you guys have pretty much created your own like roles and opportunities and jobs here, what like wisdom would you share with anybody who's listening today on how to do that themselves? Like, what challenges have you had to overcome, and what would you want people to know if they're about to embark on creating their own venture?
Well, something that I really learned in the past, like, my adult years is really to just be true to yourself, which sounds simple, but there's so much opportunities, and sometimes I feel like that could be a hindrance. We get like envy and jealous of other people doing other work, but we don't really think about if that's right for you. So I did that a little bit with private practice, where it's like, that just seemed like that was supposed to be like the dream job. And after a couple of years, I'm like, you know what, doing one-on-one ain't for me. And I think it's just really, again, just like learning what you like to do and not like putting aside like those those bad feelings. Like, Kayla, I thought it was awesome how you were like, I just don't want to do pre-med. It just came to you. And even though you want to do it for 18 years, just sometimes you just put aside those weird feelings that this might not be for you because you think it's being clouded with other opportunities or what other people think. So that was something that was big for me, is that I was like, I thought I was going to be like this big professional doing food policy. And then I learned, I'm just not very good at it. I don't think I'd be very good at that. And yeah, it's really important just to like really figure out like what you like to do. And sometimes it takes forever. It took me like, I'm sure it took a lot of us, but it took me like, 10 years, almost 8 years to really figure out what you want to do. And that's okay.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share any wisdom with our listeners?
Yeah, I can kind of go. So I don't have anything that I think is too wise. But I want to kind of branch off what you just mentioned, Amanda, which is just like getting to know yourself. And that can be super hard, especially when you kind of grow up with the world telling you that you're going to be a certain way. If you have these certain interests, if I was interested in pre-med, fall into this certain box, like that's going to fulfill your interest. And so I really think that my mom always said when I was growing up, like the worst somebody can say is no. And I mean, people can say a lot of really crappy stuff that makes you feel terrible, but the reality is if you ask for an opportunity, the worst people will say is no. And so I kind of went with that, and I have challenged a lot of the things that were put on to me growing up. And it was really hard, and I'm still doing that. I'm still young. I started my career in this pandemic. I started my business in this pandemic. Like it's all happening now. You're watching it happen. And I was still invited on a panel because I think I'm loud, especially when I feel passionate about something. And all of the kind of things that I had considered my weak points because they kind of fall outside of the boxes of society, like what you're supposed to be constrained to. Those are all what have gotten me my past few positions and what people consider my strengths now. And so really leaning into getting to know yourself in that position and cultivating the support system around that knowledge of yourself, I think is crucial. All right, but
yeah. I agree with what Kayla and Amanda have said. And, every step that I've taken, there are people that look at me and just, they either say I'm crazy or they think I'm crazy, or I think the proverbial, you are a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And, when I left the hospital and then all of a sudden I said, I'm going to start this small business, my husband literally thought I was crazy, And but then, he came on board, and, that was fine. And I guess my words of wisdom, and I don't know that they're words of wisdom, but just thinking through this, any part of the conversations that we're having tonight or any other interests that you have, reaching out to people like this and webinars and, just emails or phone calls and introducing yourself to people and figuring out a way to connect with them, whether it's through, shadowing them for a day or so, being in a working group and just building relationship. I mean, the opportunities that are starting to come our way, it's literally from being in groups trying to understand what the problem is within the food system. And then all of a sudden, there's connections that spark and you build relationship. I've been building a relationship for a year with a mid-sized distribution company. And it's taken a year to build that relationship, but now we're in negotiations on contracts and looking at what a regional supply chain, what they're trying to do and what we're trying to do and how we can partner. I never would have imagined that would have happened a year ago. A year ago, I got a phone call from an executive director of a food bank who was a previous colleague and friend, and she was given $300,000 to purchase local food for her participants to the food bank. And she called me and she said, I don't even know what the first step is. And we've been building a relationship for a year, and she invited me on a task force. And that task force, my initial immediate thought was this can become a regional food system. We can connect dots to farmers all the way to the food bank, and extension is involved. All these people are involved. And a year ago, I shared that with her, and she about hung up on me. A month ago, she called me and she said, I think we have an opportunity to work with a farm and to bring local food into the food bank. We need to talk to people. And she's leading the charge. I'm supporting her in the background. Those are things that, it takes time. That's the other thing. There are things that happen right away. There are things that take time, and you have to bridge the gap financially and figure out how to make it work.
Definitely. So it sounds like the overarching theme here is get started and just start exploring and let things fall into place. And as you get started in the work, opportunities will come up. So I think that's awesome. And it's really helpful for students who are maybe new to this, like, how could I ever do something like this? I'm not ready to start my own farm. So thanks for sharing. To our audience questions, starting with Amanda, what were the biggest surprises you encountered when you started growing food on your own farm? And if anyone's interested, do you have like one or two recommendations or lessons that you learned about that?
Yeah, so I've been growing food for a while. So it was the shift from growing a small amount to a large amount. And it's surprisingly, I always joke, but it's not really a joke, that I think almost farming is easier than gardening, because like, you're growing in a large space. So then you're like, oh, I'll dig a huge fence for it because the animals, and I have to, protect that crop. Whereas like I hear old people people all the time saying like, oh, I planted and the animals all ate it. So farming, if you know how to grow a small amount of food, doing it in bigger areas isn't as hard as you would think. But if you're new to just growing food in general, kind of like you said, the overarching theme is just start. If the seeds, when you plant a seed wants to survive. Like they're almost like living organisms. Think about a time yourself when you were put in a situation, or you think about like, oh my God, how did I ever get through grad school? I thought I was going to drown. I thought I was going to die. But we're just really keen to survival. And it sounds a little silly when thinking about it in a seed, but seeds also really want to survive. They want to grow. So really just getting started and not being so scared of it, because it sounds really daunting, to like grow vegetables from anything. But if you just give them the right resources, good quality soil, which you don't have to go and create it yourself or go anywhere special. You go to Lowe's and pick up a bag of soil, water it. That's really, and sunlight, that's really all the seed needs. So really just going for it. With regards to growing food in a large that really was surprising on growing on a larger scale is the post-harvest is actually almost actually, for me, it was harder than actually growing the food, is like storing the produce well, getting it to the customer well, making sure it doesn't wilt at the market. So that was hard, but you just make relationships and read a lot of books and volunteer on farms and just kind of learn what they do. And we recently just purchased a walk-in cooler, which is our biggest investment, and it was scary, but I know it's like, you know, kind of something that you have to do. So so we're really excited for that. But yeah, just, you know, there's some really great books out there. You know, I could send some recommendations. I know a really cute one is called You Grow Girl, and it's all about like growing food in like a small area, like in a pot or something. But again, a big part of it is just not really daunting to grow like a small tomato plant. And you can start with things that are easy, and yeah, just got to go for it and, you know, protect it. But yeah.
Cool. And Erin, since you guys also have a farming operation, do you have any tips to add to that?
I was a huge fan of the Organic Gardening magazine, and I was also a nerd, and you know, it wasn't, you could see me out in my garden sitting down and having my books open and trying to figure things out and drawing things. But no, I agree with Amanda. There's just so many ways and that you can just start growing, whether it's, you know, you're on a patio and it's a container garden, and there's so many resources online now, or if you have space where you can grow a garden, you know, it's just, like she said, get the seeds in, and all sorts of things are going to happen, you know, and you're going to learn a lot from, you know, pest management and disease and fruitful crops and harvests. And, you know, you just have to start.
Awesome. All right. And Kayla, so I was hoping you could share a little bit about what being an anti-oppression vegan means to you and how you integrate those principles into your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's definitely not something I get to talk about a lot, but so anti-oppression veganism, and I say that kind of with a lowercase. I'm not affiliated with any specific organization or specific group, but it first came onto my radar a couple of years ago after reading a piece on Medium by Julia Felice. And in this piece, she shared a lot about her personal story that I really connected with. And I think I feel more strongly about them now and reflecting on that piece than I did when I first read it. And the approach of anti-oppression veganism is really centered on this idea of an intersectional struggle. And the approach is that you have to acknowledge that there is systemic oppression, and it's not just singularly upheld against animals. And so part of my interpretation of veganism is that you have to stand up against all of the oppression, including humans and people from communities that have been intentionally marginalized by white supremacy, and other isms, right? That in addition to the speciesism that plagues our systems. And so listening to the people with agency telling their stories and not just focusing on the single issue of animal rights within the scope of veganism.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's definitely a new way to look at veganism for a lot of different people. So thanks for sharing. We are coming up on our time, but we do have a lot of questions from the audience. So if you guys have a couple extra minutes and you want to stay on, I have some more questions for you, but if you're also pressed for time, totally understand if you need to get going. So do you guys mind staying on for just a couple extra minutes?
All right, I can stay on.
I apologize. I'd love to. I have 3 minutes and I have to go to a board meeting.
Okay, no problem. Well, can I ask you one quick question then
Sure.
before we have to go? Awesome. So what do you consider the greatest challenge in advocating for greater sustainability in like a large scale institution in their supply chain and purchasing?
The biggest obstacle, one of the biggest, there are many, one of the more challenging obstacles that we've come up against is that institutions like hospitals, you know, they have to purchase anywhere from 80% to 95% of their products through contracts. And first, the obstacle was understanding what that meant. And then the second obstacle, once we understood what that meant, what opportunities were there, which the answer for us and why the door open for this mid-sized distributor is because, you know, a hospital has a US Foods that they're working with and that they have to purchase so much product from. But above that US Foods, and I may not speak very eloquently on this, so bear with me, they have an overarching organization or umbrella that it's contract purchasing. So it's not just food, it's equipment, it's toilet paper, it's right. And so they're very regulated on what they can purchase. And so even entering that is difficult. But aligning with a small or mid-sized distributor who has contracts within that umbrella, it opens up the door for conversations and opportunities. The hospital that we're working with, we're going around that right now. And we're doing that because we're putting oats into the hospital. It's a small quantity. This is a learning opportunity for her to gauge every part of the supply chain. And I say she, it's the food service director. And she is committed when the project's over to purchasing 100% of their oats from this mill. So it is a challenge. The thing that like I said, I've learned is that the relationships with other smaller size distributors and groups can open up the door easier than trying to knock on the door yourself. So lots of challenges. I don't know if I answered that, if anybody else has input, but yeah, it's difficult.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing those challenges with us and all your successes. I know you have to get going, but thanks for spending some of your dedicated computer time with us today, and have a good night.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And this was, like I said, a privilege. And if you have any questions, you have my information, please reach out. I'd love to talk to everybody. Amanda, it was great seeing you. Bye.
All right. On to some of our other questions. We'll just do a couple more. One of the things, this is probably for Kayla, but Amanda, if you have anything to add, what myth, like words or labels relating to food and nutrition, especially from social media, do you think are most important to debunk?
I have so many. I think that I would love, and I answered this on, I'm going to plug the podcast again because I tend to go off on tangents there and I'm not taking up other people's valuable time as much. But I think that what I would love to see challenged is the very detail-oriented ideas that come across on social media in certain trends, right? Is this idea of focusing on one nutrient instead of like systemic approaches or systematic approaches of taking kind of a more holistic view, right? And again, I'm not coming from the dietitian angle, so I'm not working with people who might be focused by that, but I think that we as a society get really focused on those like trends or those specific nutrients that we have to cut or eat more of or boycott. And I think that I would love to see people kind of taking a more holistic approach to that. And so, I mean, I have a lot of other ones. I would love for people to understand that buzzwords don't necessarily mean something is better for you than another product. It's just a labeling game, a marketing game, and that's kind of what I do in my work. So I'm gonna leave it with those two: is not to fall for all of the buzzwords, and then also not to get too hung up in the details unless you have a medical need for it.
Awesome, thank you. And Amanda, when it comes to your farm, and you guys are new, but when it comes to kind of this encompassing like food and nutrition and sustainability, what are some of your long-term goals for your farm and your business?
Yeah, so I would love to figure out a way to incorporate nutrition with the farm. That was always kind of a dream of mine. But I think for me, when I take on too many projects, it's a little bit overwhelming. And I think I had to step back and be like, okay, I have a baby and there's only like so much I can do. So I know, but one thing, yeah, I would love to be able to maybe teach like nutrition classes on the farm, or some cooking classes, or just do a little bit more education, with like a website and writing articles and things like that. But one thing I'm not very good at is marketing, which I'm hoping to just continue to learn a little bit more of. But I just kind of struggle with how to, like market what we do, and I guess maybe kind of working on like creating a brand so people know what we're doing. But yeah, a dream goal would be to be able to do kitchen classes and food classes on the farm, and just bring a little bit more awareness to the consumer about, small farms, and the difference between like USDA organic and using just organic methods, and why, and the difference of them, and why one would look for one versus the other.
Almost sounds like there's an opportunity here for us.
Maybe, yes, let's connect.
More nutrition communication.
What was that?
I said more nutrition communication.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because I should have minored in communications. I think I would have learned a lot.
Full time.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your expertise with us. If anyone in the audience has any other questions, please feel free to send them to us. Our email is hello@planetaryhealthcollective.org, and we can route them to the speakers, or you can connect with them. All their information is in the comments. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. But again, thank you guys so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. It's nice to meet everybody virtually.
All right. Perfect. All right. So thank you guys for all attending tonight. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you found some great connections with our speakers. If you want to get involved in the PHC, you can complete the survey that was placed in the chat. Feel free to join our Facebook group that was also in the chat, and I'll add that all at the very end. And then if you're interested in actually getting involved with us, campaigning, joining a leadership team, if you have a fun opportunity for us to help you and support you and share your work on our social media and our Facebook group and on our website, please reach out to us. Again, the email is hello@planetaryhealthcollective.org. If you're interested in becoming a writer for us, we're working on revamping our blog and getting really great, hard-hitting, sustainable posts out there that kind of link sustainability and nutrition and health equity across the board. So if any of those topics you're interested in, please send us an email. And if you just want to know how you can help support us, again, reach out. We'll post some different volunteer opportunities throughout the year as well on social media. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. And don't forget to register for next month's panel for a different group of speakers.